Welcome to another chip load. I'm going to demo some cool Macro B tool changer stuff I did right after the bump. Alright, so I got a new touch probe. It's a very cool touch probe. However, it cannot be turned on like a Renshaw through command. I have to tap it to turn it on the first time. So it's off, and then I tap it, and then it turns on, and once it's on, it works. Well, that means I don't want to leave it in my machine. That's not what the video is about. That led to the problem of I only have 12 tool holders, and on top of that, my probe and my other stuff are outside of it. So I've always got this kludgy thing about what tool I'm on. I couldn't go above tool 12. So I fixed it. PathPilot lets you do this, other ones let you do this. The AdTech didn't until I rewrote what it does. So now we've got 12 tool holders. We have the option of now going above number 12. We can go up to 99. Any tool above 12, it will ask the user to install or remove, and it remembers where it is in the carousel, so it'll go back to whatever tool you want. So we're kind of go through that demo. First off, we're on tool 3, and I'm going to go ahead and just to show that nothing really broke, we're going to change that to tool 1. So we're going to go to tool 1, start, EOB, and it's just going to do what it normally does. Tool 3 is going to come out, pop over, and go to tool 1. Ta-da! Very cool. So now we're going to go back to tool 3 real quick for the rest of this demo. Well, not for the rest of the demo, but for the demo to make sense. So, I've got a project here, whatever's going on. I have loaded up all my tools. My last tool's up. I've set its tool offset. It's time for me to probe in my work. So I'm about to probe in my work. I'm going to go ahead and set my touch probe as tool 13. What I'll do is I'll go ahead and pick to go over to tool 13. Now obviously this holder only has 12, so 13 is above 12. When I do that, it's going to go ahead and put the current tool away in the slot it belongs. Umbrella's going to go back and it's going to ask me, please insert the next tool. I'm going to go ahead and insert my tool with the comically long stack on it right now. I should mention I have something that will get rid of all of this comedy and probably move this guy up to here. It's on order. It will show up when it shows up. This bore thread is really not that common apparently anymore. Point is, that comic's going away. So I do what I want to do. I probe everything in. Now, just to complete this demo, let's suggest for whatever reason I need to pull the Heimer out and do something else. I'm going to go ahead and say I want to go to tool 14 now. So we'll go to tool 14. And what it's going to say is, hey, I'll hit start here. So what it's going to do now is going to say, all right, hey, remove the current tool from the spindle. All right, removing the current tool from the spindle. Put him away. And we're saying, yep, we removed the current tool from the spindle. And then it basically gets ready to insert a tool and then says, oh, you're going to somewhere else. Go ahead and please insert the next tool in the spindle. So we'll insert the next tool in the spindle. Our next tool is in the spindle. In my case, I need to accept that. So now we're done with that tool change. We're done with this tool. And we're now going to go and start our program. To start our program, we want to go to tool 1. So real simple. I'm going to come over here, pick tool 1. Delete 14, go to tool 1. Confirm that. It's going to come down to the remove tool process, and it's going to say, hey, go ahead and remove the tool you've got. I'll remove that tool. Once I've removed that tool, I'm going to tell it, yep, I've removed the tool. It's going to go up to the tool process. It knows it's on 3 and it wants to go to 1. It'll drop to 1. And now we're ready to start our program. So I'm going to jump over to show the Macro B code. And only other things going on here, I did create this little guy. It is a nice little shelf, 3D printed specifically for BT30. And you notice it's got notches, so it nice and holds these guys securely. I mean, this is a $600 probe, and so it's like a $1,000 shelf right there. So I figured, actually want to hold that. And then I also had if you happen to have a Skyfire and want to do this with your Skyfire, or maybe you have a silo or something, and you have a similar umbrella for whatever reason. I had to lower my umbrella. I do have a CAD file for the bushing I created to lower the umbrella, and a couple of pictures because I actually threaded and installed that on there, so I'll kind of show that too. Hey, so real quick before I jump in the code review, this is that BT30 shelf I made. I am going to be sharing a link to this on my on the description below. And also I mentioned I had to make a spacer to lower my umbrella. That's because when the umbrella goes to a height that the carousel can move, it's not high enough. It's high enough for the carousel to rotate. It's not high enough for the carousel to clear the dog feet of BT30. So I made a spacer and lowered my carousel by 8 millimeters. That solved it for me. If you have an AdTech, or if you have a Skyfire, it might be useful to you. I've tried to record this twice now, and they've both been really long and meandering. I'm gonna try to be really quick. So I'm gonna show you the code. That being said, I'm not gonna boil the ocean on this. Watch this in slow motion. I'll put a link to the file if you want it. Feel free to ask comments and questions below, but I'm not gonna boil the ocean here. Top part here is comments. Those are the outputs I care about. These are the inputs. The most interesting things going on, the most important lesson to learn in this whole process, everything I learned, this is the most important thing I'm going to give you right now, right at bat. One, use white spaces if you can, if your controller allows for them. They make reading these much easier. Two, get a good tool. This is Visual Studio Code, completely free. There are plugins for Visual Studio Code to read G-code, to read Macro B. They can't do anything with them, but they'll at least text highlight for you. If you're using spaces and you're consistent with them, you can actually close in code blocks. Really important. Third thing, really important, encapsulate your code where you can. So I have created special macros to do certain things, very bite-sized chunks. This macro here, 9701, I created, all it does is extend the umbrella. 9702, all it does is release the power drawbar. And then I have a 9703 and a 9704 that of course do the opposites. Very simple little chunks of code to write. You can write these and test them. The nice thing about this is I don't know if these could live outside of this tfunc file. They might have to live in both places. And I say that because this file for my controller runs in a very special memory space. It doesn't behave like normal. I'll get into that in a second. But I was able to test these chunks of code in macro files without having to do a full tool change, or in the case of this file for my controller, again, this file for my controller, I had to reboot every time I changed things. So I had to completely bounce the controller every time I made a change. Testing's painful. So finding ways to isolate your code and make it reusable, hugely important. So that's number 3. Reusable code where you can. Find out how you can get that to work if you're in for your controller. And my controller, I know for a fact I can get to these macros as long as they're in my tool change file. So, third thing that's really important. The better way to think of if statements in Macro B is not if then else. That's how we know common talk. If then else. However, if then else expresses code blocks. If then code block, else code block. However, with Macro B, you don't write an if then else, you write an if else then. Because what you do is your if then is only one line. So your then becomes telling it to go somewhere else. So your if else then, your if this, go somewhere else, then your else go somewhere new, then your else block. So what does that look like? What do I mean by that? This block here is a good example. If 200 equals 0, go to if 201 equals 0, go to the line I've marked as 200. And 200 is a line marked as 200. So if this is true, go to 200. So my true block, the code block I want to run is 200. That's this block down here. My else block is this block inside here. So if, else, then, and my end is the end of my end is the go-to statement at the end of my else block. So if some condition go to 20, else logic goes here in 20, then logic goes here in 21. End of if statement. So hopefully this little type out makes sense to you. Now, how these also work, kind of point 5, it flows through unless you kick it out. So this comment, let's say 1 equals 1. So in this scenario, if 1 equals 1, go to 20. The code will go, if 1 equals 1, go to 20. It will go to 20. 20 will run, and then 21. Now let's say if 0 equals 1. That'll never happen. If 0 equals 1, go to 20. It won't go to 20 because 0 doesn't equal 1. It will then run the else logic. Unless I put a bounce here, it will continue on. It will then run the then logic, which is fine. You might want that to happen. But you do need to, if you don't want that to happen, then add a go to 21. So what does that look like? Kind of walking through this. If 0 equals 1, go to 20. 0 does not equal 1. Run the else logic. Go to 21. 21 is the end of my if statement. I leave. My then logic never runs. If 0 equals 0, well 0 does equal 0. So if 0 equals 0, go to 20. 20 is down here, so we skip our else logic. Our then logic runs, and we leave our if statement. So if, else, then is how you want to think. If you get this around your head, it's going to be far less painful. Obviously, these numbers have to be unique every time you do an if statement. You can't reuse them, so come up with whatever convention you want to make these reusable. They don't have to be in order, but they have to be, they can't be you can't reuse them. So I can't do this block exactly like this with 2021 all over the place. I can do 2021, 22, 23, 24, 25. I can do by 200s, 200, 400, whatever, right? But I can't do 20. I can't reuse this exact block. This is huge. This is really important. You get your mind around that, you're going to have a much better time. So last point to make is be aware of things behaving oddly is just a fact of life. In this case, I had a jittery signal, and I'm not exactly sure why. I believe it's actually because the original T-Funk I was using was for an older version of my controller that was slightly slower. I mean, literally like, gigahertz wise slower or megahertz wise slower. And so there were some things it could get away with. The new controllers faster and, I'm not going to say smarter, but faster for sure. And subsequently, because it's a faster controller, it was actually catching things it shouldn't have. And the result was I was skipping signals. I tried to put an extra while loop inside here. I could not. I could only have one while loop. I consider this a bug. According to the documentation, I should be allowed 27 layers of while loops from the start of my program to the end. I don't know if for some reason the tool change is 26 while loops deep in the system, but for whatever reason, I could not go deeper than one while loop. Trust me, I tried and tried and tried. I had stuff in macros that worked. I pulled it out of the macro, copied it in here, it didn't. Really painful. And happy to kind of walk through what this is doing. Basically, there's a cam involved in moving the tool, and so how I know the cam moved a tool one slot is that a sensor goes on and then it goes off. The sensor going on means it started moving the tool. The sensor going off means it's finished moving the tool, and it's just because of how the cam it gets touched by the sensor, or it's a inductive sensor. So how the cam marks the inductive sensor. Point being is that I had to listen for both an on and then an off. Normally I'd do those in a loop, and then I have a loop that is the a tool has moved loop, and that's this logic down here, and then I'd have a loop of have we moved a tool yet, and that's this logic here. Because of things how they are, I had to put what would normally have been a separate loop, I had to put that separate loop inside the main loop. Totally crazy, totally a pain in the ass. I hope you never have to do it. I did, it sucked.
Last useful thing, 3000. This is pretty common across most Fanuc controllers. 3000 is an error out that will stop your program. It'll beep. You're done. Go home. 3006 will allow you to prompt the user with a message. That's how it's spitting messages out to the user. I'll put a link to this file. If you have a tool changer like mine, basically what this does is it, instead of using the system variables for the tool you're on and the size of your umbrella, I moved the size of the umbrella to a special variable 501. I can get to it edited if I want to, although I've actually hard coded it in the macro for me to 12. And then I store the current tool slot separate from the current tool number. The current tool number is a system number. That's this guy here. I should not mess with that, right? That should be controlled by the system. But so what happens is variable 200 is set. That's a target tool set by the system. I know the tool slot that the umbrella is on because I've done previous tool movements. If I'm going from a number above the tool umbrella to a number above the umbrella, then none of that comes into play. I just ask the user to remove the current tool and add the new tool. If I'm going from a tool above the umbrella to a tool in the umbrella, then I ask the user to remove the tool, which is this logic here. And again, I'm not going to boil this ocean. It's in this space. And then I replace the, I then go to the umbrella and I know the slot I'm on the umbrella, and then I move the umbrella to wherever it needs to be. Maybe it doesn't move at all. If I had tool 5 in there and I put tool 50 in it, then I would put tool 5 back, retract the umbrella, ask the user to put tool 50 in. If I then go from tool 50 back to tool 5, I know I'm on tool 5 in the umbrella. I've stored that in that special extra variable called current tool slot. So I know the current tool slot's 5, so it asks the user to remove tool 50, and then I just extend the umbrella and grab the tool. So very easy way to kind of go back and forth. I do it in 2 big macro chunks. So I do a handle all conditions of the tool being put away, and then I do a big chunk of handle all conditions of getting the next tool. This is not a perfect process, but it is a consistent process, and it was a nice simple way to break up the logic. So I don't want to boil the ocean. Last 2 times I tried to record this, way too big. Read it. Link in the description if you want to go grab it off of GitHub and read it and review it and get your opinion, and make comments below. Eventually going to end up writing a bunch of other macros for my probe, so I'll be sharing those as well. All right. Hopefully that was at least a brief one, and you got those pointers. Use spaces. Get yourself a good editor tool. Very important to have a good editing tool. If else then is the mental model of the logic. Comment the hell out of your code. Your bonus point. Comment the hell out of your code. This is not intrinsically readable code. It's not like a modern language. So the lack of intrinsic reading means you gotta comment the hell out of it, and do that. Put as many comments as you need. You will forget what you did. If you happen to be using somebody else's code and as you're reading it, replace their comments with your own, right? To make it yours, that's completely reasonable. Again, hope you found this interesting. This is the bushing / spacer. It's printed in PETG, so we're hoping that's going to be okay with the material, with coolant. The 6 inside holes are the mounting holes. That's the standard part of the umbrella, and the 6 outside holes are mounted to the actual umbrella itself. You can see here, I'm going to drill and tap those 6 holes out, outside holes. And once they're drilled and tapped, just screwed it all together in a nice kind of firm structure. Anyways, that's how that bushing goes together.
Thank you for sticking around. It wouldn't be a YouTube video if I didn't say something about hit subscribe, hit the notification button, thumbs up if you liked it, thumb down if you didn't. There's probably at this point logos around me. There might even be a Patreon logo. If you find my videos even remotely interesting, hitting that logo and like throwing $1 at me a month or something just to say, hey, you deserve coffee every so often would be great. Clearly I need more coffee. Otherwise, thanks for sticking around, and I hope you found this chip load interesting.